In the montane lands of the dwarves, a grim tale is oft told. A story of gods and mortals, of heroes and beasts, of glory and ruin. A story of wealth and death immeasurable. These histories of avarice and toil chronicle the legend of Irolkageth, Northhold. Good evening. Tonight, the dwarves of Northhold are preparing for a new military offensive against their numerous enemies. With the most recent goblin siege having just left, the dwarves once again emerge to retake the surface. One troll remains in our lands, having made its way down a maintenance tunnel next to our trash smasher. We'll deal with the creature swiftly. The civilians are getting to work setting up our greenhouse and working on the moat, but Ox is now ready to choose the first target for us to pillage. The nearest hostile settlement is a hamlet known as Bindfords. It seems to be a coastal village that used to belong to the humans, but it was taken over by some goblins a few years ago. There's hardly anybody there, apparently only around 10 inhabitants. Ox will be able to use this first easy target to brush up on her tactical skills, as she's a bit rusty. The Brass Wars, along with our Marksdwarf squad, the Inky Trenches, are marching off to pillage Bindfords. Give 'em hell, Ox! One squad remains in the fort. The Mechanical Skunks. They're training down at the entrance to the third cavern lair, but the third cavern is a ways down. It takes a very long time for those dwarves to head back up to the fort, which means a lot of wasted time whenever someone needs to go to bed or get something to eat. So, we've been working on a new living area right above their training grounds. It's equipped with a dining hall that we're going to stock with food and drink, a dormitory, personal bedrooms for each of the 10 soldiers in the squad, and we're setting up a small shrine. With these amenities available near the cavern training grounds, the squad will be able to live down here instead of constantly making the long hike up and down. Any other dwarves in need of reprieve when returning from the caves will be able to make use of this space too. This home away from home will be dubbed the Deep Fort. And I think that after the squad proved themselves against that forgotten beast, they've earned a more respectable name for their garrison in the caves. The Mechanical Skunks will be renamed to the Deep Guard. We salute their courage. The Brass Wars have returned from their assault on the hamlet. Ox's superior tactical skills allowed our people to rampage through the settlement without any dwarven casualties. We killed 3 goblins and made off with some loot. Some clothing, a stack of copper bolts, a metal flask, a small gemstone, a zinc cage, and a large spiked copper ball. Nothing particularly exceptional, but a lot of useful trinkets. I don't think there's many goblins left at that site, so I think I'll send this squad right back out to go raze the place to the ground. We could capture it, but it's just a shabby little fishing town. I don't see the point in leaving behind a garrison to defend it. The greenhouse has been completed. Down in the farms here, we've got some new farm plots, exposed to sunlight, which we can use to plant some surface crops. We're going to start growing blackberries, fisherberries, blueberries, cranberries, strawberries, grapes, parsnips, radishes, ratweed, and whipvines, all of which will be brewing into alcohol. We're also growing some rope reeds, which we'll be able to weave into cloth. I'm sure our dwarves will appreciate this great new variety of refreshment we're providing for them. The squads are back from their raid. Sounds like they met with limited resistance like before. They killed a goblin, though they didn't actually manage to destroy the site. They looted something. All they found was one dingo leather era. It's an instrument made by the goblins, I think. It's a tiny handheld wind instrument, a kind of bag that you blow into through a blowpipe made of crocodile bone, and sound comes out the melody pipe made of copper, as well as 2 drone pipes made of green glass. An interesting look into goblin culture, though since nobody here knows how to play it, it's not actually worth anything to us, unless we meet some goblin bards, that is. Well, that hamlet is still standing, and while I feel a bit guilty about keeping these dwarves constantly on the march, I do want to properly raise it. I'm sending the 2 squads back over there. It's only half a day's travel away, they'll live. Do us proud, soldiers. It took the squads quite some time to get that raid completed. I think they were being held up by a really slow dwarf who was taking too long to leave the fort. In any case, they've returned. They didn't kill anyone while they were in the hamlet. I think it might be totally empty of enemy soldiers. For some reason, the dwarves didn't destroy the site though. They just grabbed a few articles of clothing and went home. Well, I'm not seeing much value to continued raids on that particular site. We should look for some more important targets. We'll give the squads a little time to rest before they go out again, though. While those squads were out, we got some new migrants, bringing the fort to 138 inhabitants. This brings the fort very close to becoming a metropolis large enough to be able to become the new capital of our nation. With autumn nearly upon us, we'll have to seriously consider whether we want to make an offering to the existing mountain home to entice our queen to move her seat of power here. We still don't quite know what to make of our enigmatic monarch, but perhaps her motives will become more clear if we can keep an eye on her directly. However, if she is plotting something, we might be better off keeping our distance. It's a tough decision, we'll need to consider it carefully. We've just had a new artifact completed. A dolomite ring called Cornishesht Oshoshishawl, which translates to Cavern Risked the Hermitic Frigidity. It's encrusted with rectangular dolomite cabochons, studded with gold, decorated with baguette-cut clear glass gems, and it menaces with spikes of crundlebone, giant leopard leather, and purple spinel. On the item is an image of Aiden Perfect Handles, our queen. The image relates to her ascension to the position of queen. There's also an image of 2 circles in clear glass, and an image of table-cut gems in hemp. That's a lot to fit on one ring. It must be very intricate. Interesting that we get an artifact depicting our queen just as we're discussing her. Perhaps it's some kind of sign. As with all things related to our ruler, the meaning of it all is ambiguous. We've finally been making major strides on the moat. Our chunk of the mountain has been completely separated from the main mass of stone, and we've dug the moat 1 Z-level below the surface thus far. We're smoothing each layer of stone as we go down. This will make it much harder to climb up the side of the fortress. We're also preparing the battlements that our marks dwarves will shoot down from. There's an entire peak of the mountain up here that's now completely inaccessible by land, and is relatively safe from any attackers. We'll have to figure out how to make use of this impressive bit of land. All in all, Northhold is about to become an extremely defensible fortress. The days of passively waiting out sieges are about to end. The outpost liaison has once again arrived with the autumn dwarven caravan. The lands associated with Northhold have been expanding to our south, as more hillocks have been established there. The liaison has come to congratulate us on our growing sphere of influence, and has announced that our barony is being elevated to a county. This will make Scratches into a count. Let's hope the new title doesn't go to his head. In war news, the goblins have taken a site from our civilization, a hillocks called Hazy Granite near the mountain home. Not a huge loss, but I'd like to finally start working our way down there to beat the goblins back from the region. However, we'll trade before we send our squads out again. We're buying a lot of armor from them, and a lot of other metal. I want our squads properly equipped. We've been leaving our soldiers a little vulnerable for too long. While trading here, we have an opportunity to make an offering to the mountain home, encouraging the queen to relocate to Northhold. But I think I'll defer that for another year or so. I want our defenses prepared before she arrives. The brass wars are re-equipping themselves, and I'd say it's time to send them out again. We're going to have them pillage one of these dark pits to our south, called Black Muddy. Ah, and they've returned. It looks like Ox's tactics were once again superior, and we were able to kill 7 goblins without any of our people being wounded. We collected some clothing, some armor, a silver scourge, all simple stuff, but still a bit useful. I've also noticed that Bindfords, the first hamlet we were attacking, is now completely abandoned. It looks like our efforts there weren't in vain. Anyway, we'll keep sending those squads out to attack Black Muddy until the place is destroyed. I doubt we'll run into much trouble there. With Northhold now officially a county, Scratches will need to have his accommodations improved to reflect his status. His throne room and his dining room were actually already worthy of the discerning tastes of Count Scratches, but his tomb and his bedroom still need some improvements. We'll have some golden statues forged that I think Scratches will find appropriate. The giantess Osmod Skoxbosbo Stednaza has come. A gigantic creature resembling a human, almost unparalleled in size. She has come to kill our citizens and take our treasures, but I don't think we'll have any trouble felling this monster. Despite her size, she's unarmed and unarmored. Adamantine cuts down the small and the large with ease. Strike her down, soldiers! Yes, the brass dwarves are once again proving their skill. Our dwarves are cutting off limbs, they've spilled her guts, and Ox has dealt the final blow, decapitating the creature. We'll have the body disposed of. I think the trash smasher will still be able to handle a creature of this size. We've just come upon a horrifying scene. Rakust Mishthemnish has just been found, completely drained of blood. The second dwarf that has died in our fortress. Rakust was a brave axe dwarf of the Deep Guard. She was exsanguinated in her sleep, which means there's only one possible explanation. One of our dwarves is a vampire. We need to hunt down the killer before they strike again. Her body was found here, in her bedroom down in the Deep Fort. Until now, none of our dwarves had committed any crimes, so we haven't had any need for a justice system. With the murder of Rakust, we're preparing a dungeon to house the culprit, and any other ne'er-do-wells that might try to disrupt the peace. The prison will need to be administrated by a captain of the guard. I think what I'll do is repurpose our Marksdwarf squad, turning them into the Fortress Guard. The dwarves have named the new Fortress Guard squad the Inky Savages. The significance of having our Marksdwarfs described as inky escapes me, but they seem determined to keep the title. Lycont Zonilid, the captain of our Marksdwarf squad, is now our fortress's justiciar. The Captain of the Guard. In accordance with her new title, she'll get new quarters, which we'll put here, attached to the prison. Lycott is 23 years old, believes that acquiring power is one of the most important things in life, believes sacrifice should be respected, and finds the idea of independence and freedom somewhat foolish. She acts impartially and is rarely moved to mercy. She seems pretty cold, but it sounds like her personality fits the job description. We need impartiality in the hunt for the killer, and frankly, I'm not feeling particularly merciful right now either. And there's another dwarf who I suspect is feeling vindictive. Kadol Steruzmelbil, the commanding officer of the Deep Guard. This is the same hammer dwarf who once killed a blind cave ogre, saving Ox's life. He's well over 100 years old, he never complains or shows emotion, he cares a great deal about perseverance, he doesn't respect a society without strife, and he is deliberately cruel to those unfortunate enough to be subject to his sadism. That description paints a kind of disturbing picture. But a soldier under his command was murdered on his watch, and Kadol doesn't seem like the kind of dwarf who would just take that lying down. Given his skill with a warhammer and his cruel nature, I'm going to assign Kadol as our hammerer. The hammerer is the fortress's executioner. When a truly heinous crime is committed, Kadol will be the one to carry out dwarven justice. I have the unnerving feeling that he's looking forward to finding an opportunity to make use of that hammer. But before we can put anyone through the dwarven justice system, we need an actual suspect. As far as evidence goes, it's pretty sparse. All we have is a witness report from the person who found the body, Fath Mosusan, a mason. Irritatingly, the mason waited nearly a week to actually report the body they found. That seems pretty suspicious, but we've seen Fath eating and drinking, so he can't be the one who did the deed. Vampires can't eat or drink. The next possibility that comes to mind is Sarvesh Vabakregoth, a bone doctor. She's the most recent citizen to join the fortress, and she arrived in a migrant wave all by herself. However, we can see her drinking alcohol right now. Vampires don't get thirsty for anything except blood, so she's ruled out. This leaves the trail rather cold. But we can't give up. All these sleeping dwarves are at risk. At any time, the killer could strike again, and drain another dwarf in their sleep. But for now, we don't have any leads, so we're just going to have to keep our eyes open. I'm going to keep checking dwarves, looking for ones that haven't had anything to eat or drink recently. Only time will tell if we'll be able to find the killer before they strike again. The were-elk, Aban Mebtab Tosed, has come. A large elk twisted into humanoid form. It is crazed for blood and flesh. Now you will know why you fear the night. A dangerous beast. One bite could begin a were-elk infection that might spread through the entire fortress. However, this may prove a good opportunity to test our fortress's defenses. We have a ring of fortifications circling the fortress, which our marks dwarves can use to shoot down at enemies from a position of safety. The moat completely keeps enemies away from the fort, and now goes down 2 Z levels. Not incredibly deep, but I think it will do the job. We'll station the fortress guard up on the battlements, and have the brass dwarves head out to face the beast under their covering fire. Let's see how this goes. The beast is being distracted by a deer, and it's heading in the opposite direction from our fort. And it's just turned back into a dwarf. Well, that was a bit anticlimactic, but I guess I can't complain. In any case, our defenses are in a pretty good place right now. We should be able to have a much easier time breaking sieges when we can shoot at enemies safely from behind a moat. But the defenses of Northhold are about to be tested. There are ancient powers that roam the world, leaving chaos and death in their wake. Our ambition and might have drawn a leviathan from the searing deserts far to the south. The desert's titan, Alatha, has come, a great scaly slug. It has thin wings of stretched skin, and it has an austere look about it. Its cerulean scales are large and set far apart. Beware its webs. It's difficult to overstate how much of a danger Alatha is to the fortress. It can spit webs which will completely incapacitate anyone who gets covered in them. A creature with webs can slaughter scores of melee dwarves without anyone being able to land a hit. And to make matters worse, Alatha can fly, so it can trap dwarves without them even being able to reach it. Our new defenses do give us one major advantage: our marks dwarves. They can fire on the creature from relative safety behind the fortifications. Alatha's initial approach to the fortress will be our best shot at taking down this colossus. However, we will need to shoot it down before it closes the gap. Because while our defenses are formidable, Northhold has 2 vulnerabilities right now that prevent us from being totally safe if we try to lock down the fort. The first is a single hatch on Northhold's peak. It comes out on the other side of the drawbridge. With Alatha able to simply fly over the moat, getting in through that route would be easy. The second vulnerability is right here at our drawbridge. We were replacing some of the soil here with stone blocks, but that's left a gap in between the drawbridge and the wall that Alatha would be able to squeeze through. So, we fight. Either we kill this creature, or it kills us. Alatha is coming. It has landed on Northhold's peak, without ever going into range of the marks dwarves. That's not good. The creature is right next to the hatch. Wait, Alatha has decided to head back towards the main entrance. It's attacking an engraver, the last civilian that was still outside. We might be able to take it down while it's distracted. It killed the engraver, and now it's heading off to kill some livestock. And that was the opening we needed. The full force of the Brass Wars has come down upon Alatha while its back was turned. They've begun hacking away at it. They've cut off both of its wings. A Hammerlord, Erith Avuz Athser, landed an incredible punch to the creature's body, killing it. We lost one engraver, but miraculously, besides them, the only injury anyone sustained was someone losing a few teeth. We got extremely lucky. If Alatha hadn't gotten distracted, it could have easily stunned everyone with webs and left them utterly defenseless. The fortress could have been destroyed right here. As for Erith, her legendary killing blow has earned her a nickname. She will be known as Slugger. Her feats have also earned her a new title. She will now be the fortress's champion. The position is mostly honorary, but it will allow her to take the lead in military training exercises. It strikes me, after these beast attacks, that having animals around our entrance to distract invaders is actually quite a large advantage. The Werebeast and the Titan both focused on attacking harmless animals instead of our dwarves. Keeping some large animals outside might be a great way to bolster our defenses even further. Luckily, we've been collecting quite the assemblage of strange animals over the years, which we've moved into a new animal training area. The cages in the caves and on the surface have given us no shortage of caged crundles, elkbirds, and deer, but none of these creatures are large enough for what we're trying to do now. No, the animals I'm most interested in here are the giant coyotes and the rutherers. Neither are particularly particularly aggressive, so they're not likely to do much to actually fend off attackers, but they are very large and should prove to be good distractions. We'll try and get some tame breeding populations going so we can start placing them outside. Now, the Rutherers in particular are a very tempting species for breeding, as they have some cultural significance for us. The late King Zuthon once went on a journey to the deep to tame Rutherers, so having such regal beasts around is quite the honor. The ones we have chained up here have already given birth to some tame Rutherer children. I'm going to let our dwarves claim one of these guys as a pet if anyone wants one. Spring has come, heralding in a new year, 129. And with the new year, the elves arrived to trade. Perhaps they've finally brought some actually useful creatures. A giant firefly, a snail, a giant dingo, a giant hamster, a giant red squirrel, and a black bear. Sadly, unlike grizzlies, black bears cannot be war-trained. But these animals might prove to be good distractions on the surface. We'll let our dwarves claim any of them as pets in case someone takes a fancy to them. Except the giant firefly, we'll just eat that. The elven diplomat is meeting with Count Scratches. She's demanding that we put a limit to our tree cutting. While these elves are hardly in a position to make any demands of us, we could send out our squads to crush them at any time. But they did just bring us a bear and some very amusing giant rodents. They only want us to cap our trees at 100, which we'll probably not be able to cut down in a year's time anyway. For now, we'll agree on their silly lumber treaty, but future agreements are going to be contingent on these elves continuing to bring useful animals. They're on thin ice. The diplomat says a few parting slurs, then heads on her way. We've gotten a few more migrants, and we're going to use this small addition to the workforce as an opportunity to set up another military squad. We've got a few potential candidates in mind to fill out the squad. This new squad has been named the Purple Mechanisms. Enigmatic. We'll put our most skilled spear dwarf, Samir Lekbeb-Epa, as our captain for this squad. He's quite old, 152, but his experience will no doubt prove valuable to the new recruits. Part of this squad's role is stress relief. Dwarves who enjoy military training are going to be able to train in this squad without ending up in frequent combat. However, our dwarves are keeping it together quite well. Nobody in the fort is particularly stressed, and I'd rather like to keep it that way. It's been some time since the vampire attack, and while no more murders have been committed against our dwarves, I'm growing increasingly uneasy with how we haven't been able to find the culprit yet. I'm going to start an extremely thorough investigation. I'm going to go through all of our dwarves one by one, all 139 of them if I have to, and check each one's recent memories. When we find a dwarf that has never eaten, slept, or drank alcohol, we'll know we found the vampire. It's slow going, there are a lot of dwarves to check. But here we have Dayton Katen Atast. She appears to be 110 years old. She values decorum and proper behavior, doesn't respect a society without strife, and doesn't feel strongly about the law. She really wants a drink, and in fact there is not a single instance of her eating, sleeping, or drinking alcohol in her memory. And the most damning thing? She was horrified seeing Rakust scholar trades die. Her presence at the scene of the crime and her history of anti-metabolic behavior is evidence enough for me. We're convicting her of murder by exsanguination. Dayton is actually not this vampire's real name. Her real name is Pock Rainclouted. Pock was once a member of the human civilization, the Brave Unions, which we're now at war with. She once lived in this town, Calm Panther, to our southeast. In the year 41, she began organizing a group of outlaws in the tavern, which grew to become the largest criminal group in the town. But 57 years later, she profaned a temple, and a human god cursed her to prowl the night in search of blood. Eventually, her murders caught up with her, and when her fellow criminals realized she wasn't aging, she was forced to flee. She bounced around different human sites, killing until people grew suspicious. She's killed at least 40 people in her dark hunt. And then she came here, to Northhold. Well, we're going to put an end to this right now. Her sentence is 50 hammer strikes from Kadol, our hammerer. He's heading up to the surface to deliver justice. He's arrested her, and is leading her to the prison. He's picked up a bronze warhammer from the depot. Pock knows what's coming, and is waiting, patiently. But while Kadol does the dark deed, a werebeast has come. We'll have the brass wars in our Marksdwarf squad adopt a defensive position. 2 of our axe dwarves quickly hack apart the beast without incident. And back in the prison, it's done. Pock is dead. This monster will prowl the night no longer. This is grim work, but we must keep the peace. Pock's curse has reminded us what happens to those who displease the gods. To avoid their wrath, we're going to furnish our temple with a more complete set of shrines, properly representing the pantheon. Count Scratches has a few gold statues of some of our gods in his throne room that I think we can use for the purpose. We'll replace them with some statues that I think he'll appreciate a little more. We are commissioning some statues of the other gods to round out the temple. And here is the completed place of worship. It's a bit cramped, but the tight spaces force dwarves to stand close to the statues and appreciate their designs. A lot of dwarves are coming by to pay their respects. It seems the new temple is quite popular. Our population of dogs in the fortress has increased, so we've trained some of them to become war dogs. We're assigning them to the brass wars. I suspect these animals will be quite effective in attacks on enemy settlements. In fact, we've just had the brass wars attack another goblin site with their war dogs. The place is called Ardent Smile, another hamlet the goblins took from the humans. Let's see how our soldiers and their furry friends did. Looks like one of the dogs ripped a goblin's neck, but then was wounded in the leg and had to retreat. Well, our soldiers killed a number of goblins anyway and made off with some boots, so I'd say that mission was a success. A leatherworker has created an artifact, Thokteguz Kastol Ushdish, an elkbird leather cur, some kind of instrument. This is a small handheld cloth string instrument made of elkbird leather with 12 strings. It menaces with spikes of elkbird and hungry head leather and saltpeter. On the item is an image of Etur Ringpears, the dwarf, in Highwood. Apparently that's some baroness who lives in the mountain home. Well, perhaps this impressive instrument will see some use in our tavern. We also had a bone carver produce another artifact some time ago. Teguz Istik, Leaped Shrivel, is a crundlebone grate. It is decorated with crundlebone and encircled with bands of pear-cut morions. On the item is an image of a moose in gold, and an image of Etur Ringpears, the dwarf, in purple spinel. Our dwarves seem oddly fascinated with this baroness. She was once a monster hunter, but she eventually settled down in the capital once she got appointed to nobility. The only other thing of note she's done was aid in the defense of the capital during an attack by some humans. Somebody named Laro Ghost Earth rounded up a few other outlaws, and they killed 5 dwarves. Apparently they were working alone. Hang on, Laro Ghost Earth? That's one of our crossbowmen. She's a human mercenary who joined the fortress a few years ago. Perhaps we should be doing some better background checks before letting people in. Laro is an extremely cruel and sadistic person, which might explain the seemingly random killing she took part in at the capital. Laro's crimes are rather egregious. She'll have to be punished in some way. But perhaps a light touch would be appropriate. After all, she hasn't committed any crimes here, and she has shown loyalty to Northhold by helping in our military efforts. Letting her remain in the fortress is out of the question, but I think I have a way to resolve the situation. The goblin dark pits of Blackmuddy have been repeatedly invaded by the Brass Wars, and I don't think there are any goblin soldiers remaining there. We're going to secure that site and incorporate it into our holdings. We'll send one of our citizens, the glassmaker Saxul Etfath, to treat with any remaining goblins there and negotiate the surrender of the settlement. Saxul will then be appointed administrator of those dark pits. Laro, meanwhile, will work as a bodyguard to Saxul and help defend the site if goblin armies try to retake it. It'll be a dreary assignment, patrolling the trenches and keeping peace among the conquered goblins, but it's honest work. Hopefully it'll keep her out of trouble. We chose Saxul for the administrator position because, well, I'm not really convinced he's cut out for fortress living. He's got a nasty temper, and while he's been holding it together alright so far, I've got the sneaking suspicion that he's going to start to become a problem in a few years. I think he'd be happier as ruler of the pits, where he'll probably have more opportunities to vent his frustration, away from Dwarven society. The 2 of them are heading off to the pits. The pits of Blackmuddy have been conquered and incorporated into our holdings. It looks like things didn't quite go according to plan. Laro ended up taking the administrator position instead of Saxul. Well, to be honest, I don't really care what she's doing as long as she's not here. After all, it would be quite the insult to the Queen if she found such a criminal residing here when she arrived. Yes, we are finally preparing to bring the Queen to Northhold, and to make our fortress the center of our civilization, the Searing Hatchet. There's much to do. Autumn is approaching. Once the caravan takes our offering to the mountain home, the Queen will arrive in short order. A vast throne room is being dug out and smoothed, along with the Queen's royal bedroom, dining room, and a mausoleum. And what luck! An engraver, Sarvesh Egathamost, has created an artifact. Edtulikist, the Grooved Whispers, a talc figurine of our Queen. Excellent timing, Sarvesh. This figurine depicts the Queen's coronation in the year 125. It is encircled with bands of oval talc cabochons, rectangular purple spinal cabochons, and octagon-cut rose quartz. The object menaces with spikes of elk-bird bone, clear glass, crystal glass, cave spider silk, and desert titan leather. A rare addition indeed. We will honor our Queen with this magnificent object by displaying it in her dining room. Autumn is nearly upon us, and the dwarves are excited at the prospect of this fortress becoming the nation's seat of power. With our military efforts growing more bold and our wealth increasing every day, it's clear that Northhold has earned this honor. The time has finally come for us to meet our mysterious monarch and learn of her plans for our people. But it's getting late, and I must retire. Come find me again some other night, and hear more of the dwarves of old, and their doomed fortress.